Jimmy Barnes was a writer for a little local publication called It Is What It Is. He was tall, lanky, and a loner. With his wavy dark hair and dark plastic-rimmed glasses, he could have easily been mistaken for Clark Kent without the Superman alter ego, that is. Jimmy had lofty goals. Someday he would be the next late-night guru of news and comedy. Although things seemed a bit bleak at the moment, he knew anything was possible. What he lacked in persona and talent could be made up with perseverance. As long as he believed he could do it, eventually everyone else would believe it also. Jimmy needed a story, a big story, the kind of story that catapults the mundane into the extraordinary. The old hawking house on the outskirts of town had been deserted for years. Rumors ran rapid about that old house being haunted with numerous unsubstantiated claims of apparitions, eerie music, and lights flickering on and off without electricity. This was Jimmy's chance, time to prove to the world and himself that he could crack the code, reveal the truth, and destroy the rumors. Jimmy and his sidekick Chris made plans to set up shop the next night, which just so happened to be Halloween. This would be the perfect storm, so to speak, for a haunting reveal. Dusk was settling in. Jimmy and Chris, armed with flashlights, a camera, and microphone, arrived at the hawking house. Here goes. Lights, camera, action, Jimmy snickered to himself. Swatting tree limbs and weeds, they inched their way ever so slowly toward the door. The old wooden entry door was covered by a huge spider web, but that wasn't all. The web was occupied with the biggest, ugliest, hairiest spider they had ever seen. Was the spider blocking the entrance or merely protecting the intruders? Chris nervously turned the knob and pushed the door open. Jimmy and Chris entered the home, camera rolling. Jimmy was leading the way, thinking Chris was right behind him. Jimmy was wrong. Chris had fallen through the trap door in the floor. Jimmy turned around. Chris? Chris, where are you? There was no answer. The fear of the sound of nothing is paralyzing. The glow from the flashlight bounced up and down in rhythm with the shaking of Jimmy's hand. Regardless, Jimmy came to capture this story and he was going to see it through. Toward the stairs Jimmy walked. Suddenly, Jimmy felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He sensed someone was right behind him as his own breath caught in his throat. He knew he was not alone in the impenetrable darkness. The other was there with him. "Been a while, Jimmy," he heard, and realized it was his own voice, but not an utterance of his own volition. His ears strained against the deafening silence for a creak of an old board, the shuffle of a shoe, or the sigh of a breath. Frantically, he turned every which way until his eyes finally settled on a bunny rabbit? Seriously? Just a rabbit? However, his thoughts, still confused from hearing his own voice. Did the rabbit really talk using my voice, he thought? The rabbit just sat there and stared and stared and stared. Jimmy was dumbfounded and a bit relieved, yet pondered why the rabbit just sat there staring and staring and staring. Jimmy aimed the flashlight in the direction of the bunny, but what he thought was a rabbit was anything but. As the creature slowly moved towards him, its large shadow looming behind it, he found himself so afraid that he was unable to scream. The unheard scream caught in his throat as the shadow loomed over him. He backed himself over to the nearest door. Jimmy so desperately wanted to get out of the house and escape this nightmare. There was no way out except for one door over in the corner. Behind the door, he heard the sound. It sounded like a low hum, but as it got louder and louder and louder, he realized it was anything but a hum. He opened the door to find that the sound was a familiar yet chilling laugh. "Chris, is that you?" "Ha ha ha ha! Yes, it's me. You realize you have no clue, do you, dude?" Then the scream that refused to escape before found its way out of the depth of his throat, but sounded more like a squeak of a mouse going, "Eek! Eek!" In fact, it wasn't a mouse, but a nasty gray rat racing across his shoes. Chris pointed at an antique cedar chest on the other side of the room. "Open it," Chris demanded. Jimmy by this time was trembling as he lifted the lid. The hinges creaked and dust flew everywhere. What he found inside can never be explained, or can it? Staring back at Jimmy, a headline from an article dated October 31st, 1938, that read, "Late night news and comedy icon Jimmy Barnes reported missing. Many fear the rumors of the haunted Hawking House are true." Okay.